Bonjour, good afternoon, and welcome to WASA Distance Education. My name is Greg Weaver, and this is ENG3C, Grade 11 College Prep English. I'd like to welcome everyone listening across the north today at home, your learning center, or on Bell Express View. To call in and join our class, you can call 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017 or 2983 in the Sioux Lookout, Lac Seul, or Dryden areas. Let's welcome everyone back to class today. This is our last class before the March break. And we are going to be covering the rest of Lesson 12 today. Once we get that done, that's pretty much as much as I want to cover today. There's not a whole lot. I don't want to start Unit 13 because we're going to have a week off. I don't want you to forget what we're covering. So we're going to pick up with that. We also will end up reading probably a little bit of the novel just to help to clarify and explain what's going on in these last two lessons, in Lesson 11 and in Lesson 12. And get you set up so you can read as much of the novel as you can over the March break. A quick reminder that the WASA office will be closed next week, and I will be away tomorrow. I'm leaving later tonight, and I will not be back until the 23rd of March, that Monday. If you need any help or any questions, you can send me an email or send me a Facebook message. However, I probably will not respond to it until next weekend. But if you want to have a question, you want to ask it right away before you forget, send it to me, and I will get back to you next week. So, as well, remind everyone, once we come back from the March break, that we have 4 weeks of classes left. 3 weeks of classes left. We have week 7, week 8, and week 9. So we'll finish that time off finishing up Unit 3. And then we'll get to Unit 4. Now, Unit 4 looks at poetry. And looks at different forms, different types, and has you writing some poetry as well. We'll look at that after the March break. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And we were looking at key question 13. Now, just looking at language, and specifically words that you may not know what they mean or even have heard of. And that's because the English language is constantly changing and evolving. And words are being added to the language and are being dropped or not being used. Just for example, for words such as cool, in the context that that's interesting, that's okay, that's neat, only entered the English language less than 20 years ago. So I remember when I was in school, it first started being said. Other words like LOL I've also entered, and words such as over here, there's uncouth and mollify, have pretty much left the language. They are hardly ever used anymore. And when they are used, it's normally in a specific context. So that's what this assignment was looking at. So you had to define and locate in the novel 10 words. Now we did 2 of them together. We did number 1, which is uncouth, and we did number 7, which was mollify. The other 8, which are subpoena, succinct, unobtrusive, litigant, corroborating, smugly, ambidextrous, and turbulent are all words that you may or may not have heard of. Some of those I'm assuming you have, others you haven't. But they're all 8 of those words are still used in English language today. The 2 we looked at are the ones that most students in the past have had a hard time using and identifying what they mean. So that's what we looked at in class yesterday. So what we're going to pick up on now is what says characterization of the minor characters. And you can find that on lesson 17. So it says the minor characters of the novel are developed using the same techniques as the major characters. What they say, think, and do, and by how others in the novel react to them. Now, because the minor characters do not act as narrators, however, it's often a little more difficult to understand what motivates or drives them or how they feel about certain things. So let's look at the support question here. And this is on page 17. And we're going to work through this together because some of the answers that you do work with this, you need for key question 14, which is later on. So it says, to help you explore this concept of minor characters, complete the chart below for 2 of the main characters of the novel and 4 of the minor characters in the novel. You should notice that it is much easier to come up with examples from the novel for Scout and Jem than it is for Dill, Tom, Mayella, or Miss Mowdy. That does not mean, however, that these characters are necessarily less emotionally developed in the novel. Rather, it might just mean that the characterization is a more subtle and requires a bit more practice to locate. So you're going to need a different color pen or pencil. You want to go back to left and fifth where you imagine a person's life to have caused them feel emotion, where you imagine situation down in the blank. So I just noticed there's a bit of a word error in this question. So give me a second and I will fix that for us. So what you want to do with this chart is look at and try to identify times that you've seen these characters display this type of emotion. So you want to fill in the blanks and shade them in if you've seen or you've read about the character feeling those emotions. So we have frustration, anger, relief, joy, fear, and humiliation. So for both Scout and Jem, they felt those emotions they felt every single one of those emotions at least once. So we're going to fill in every single blank there. Now, if you haven't read all the way through chapters 12 to 21, you may have a hard time answering um, answering the parts for Tom and Mayella. So if you have to, leave those blank and come back to them once you have looked at chapters 12 to 21. But for Dill, have we ever seen Dill feel frustrated? You ever read about him being frustrated? There was one time at the very beginning where he was frustrated by Scout refusing to um, want to marry him because they were still young. So you can shade that one in there. Has he ever felt anger? We ever read about him being angry? Well, we have when he yelled at Scout about not wanting to participate or be part of their play and their dare to go on keep bugging Boo Radley. So we can fill that one in there. You already see with a sense of relief. We have when Jem came back out from the Radley backyard after he escaped safely. But we've never really seen him express joy. He hasn't really ever expressed his joy about something. Except for when he comes back for the summertime. He seems happy and joyful then. Now, fear we've never seen. Never see him actually be scared of something. He's pretty fearless. So we'll leave that one blank because we can't think of a time when that occurred. And humiliation, we can't think of a time yet where we've actually seen him humiliated. So we're going to leave these two blank. We'll leave them white. Now for Tom and Mayella, this is going to be pretty challenging if you haven't read them yet, but we're going to work through it. These two right now, and then we'll get Miss Maldy as well. So for Tom, as you read through, you'll see how he expresses anger and frustration about what's happening to him. How he's been accused of a crime that he doesn't believe he committed. We've never seen him express relief because he is on trial for rape. So we can't shade that one. There's not a lot of joy with that as well. We have seen him fearful, though, when the mob goes outside the jail to try and get him. And that happens back in chapter 13. And humiliation, I'm not sure. I can't think of a time right now where he's been humiliated, but I also haven't read the novels since last year. I'm rereading it as we go. So I'm going to leave that one unshaded for now because I'm not sure. Now for Mayella, we've seen fear and humiliation. One of the quotes we read about on page 240 yesterday. She fears Atticus and being humiliated by him like he did her father. So we'll check those two right away. Now for frustration, yep, she's frustrated on the witness stand. We'll shade that one. We can't really think of a time we ever saw her show some anger. Or any relief. Or any joy for that matter either. So leave those three unshaded. Now, I'm not saying that this is I can't recall that. If you read this and see something different, then let me know and fill this in on your own. So this is just a suggested answer. It's not being handed in. It's just to help you think about what's going on. And last is Miss Mowdy. Now, we've seen her frustrated. Yes, when they kept going to her garden, worried about wrecking her flowers. Let's shoot that one in. We've seen her angry. Yeah, let's see. We've seen her angry with Jem and Scott before. We've seen her have both relief and joy that her house burned down was too big to take care of. We've never seen her really scared, though. Nothing really seems to faze her or scare her. And we've never really seen her humiliated either. And so that is what we have. So we notice we have 2 unshaded boxes for Dill. We have a 3 for Tom. I'm just highlighting these right now as it's easy to see them. And 2 for Miss Mowdy. So number 2 says, second part is a different color pen or pencil. Go back to links you've left and match situations that could occur in that person's life to have caused them to feel that emotion. Write your imagined situation down in the blank. Well, there's not a space for that here. But you want to think of a time when Miss Mowdy could have fear or humiliation. Thinking of her Mayella could show anger, relief, or joy. And thinking of a time, Tom showed the same thing, relief, joy, and humiliation. And Dill showed fear or humiliation. Take your thing when you think they could have. It won't be in the novel. Think of a time that could happen in their lives. They'd feel that emotion. And quickly write it out. You can either number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you quickly do it like that if you wanted to. Remember, this is not being hinted in. It's just there to help you think about that. And help you with key question 14, which we are going to look at right now. So it says, now that you've begun to analyze the understanding of the personalities of the minor characters from the novel, it's time to apply that understanding. Your task is to write a letter from one of the minor characters describing a specific event in the novel. Successful letters were written using the same voice as the character and how they use it in the novel. So, example, Miss Mayella's letter will be full of slang. Dill's letter will have some slang and short forms, really short sentences. Miss Mowdy's letter will be very prim and proper. And there probably wouldn't be a letter from Tom Jackson because, as we find out later in the novel, he can't read or write. Direct reference to specifics from the text must be included in the body of the letter, which should include a salutation or greeting, such as Dear John, Dear Susie. The examples of that. There also should be multiple short paragraphs and a signature from your character. Now, you may choose any of the following characters section to explore. Miss Naughty's writing to her sister about the events the day it snowed in Maycomb in Chapter 8. That's when woke up to snow. From her perspective, woke up to snow. Jem and Scout asked to borrow her snow, and then they took some of her gardening equipment to make a snowman on the lawn. And then that night, her house burned down. Another situation you could write from is Dale's letter to a friend at home explaining everything there is to know about Boo Radley and their attempts to make contact with him. Now, both of those letters focus on events that happen in the first part of the novel, which is the part that you should have read by now because you read all of it in class together. Now, the third option is from the point of view of Mayella, writing a letter to a friend years after the book takes place, confessing the truth about what happened between her, her father, and Tom Robinson. So you want to choose one of those three situations and write a letter. Now, please note that in addition to your final copy, you must provide a plan for your letter, which lists the textual details or the examples from the novel that you will include in your letter, and 4 character traits of the writer that you will demonstrate in the body of the letter and how you develop each of these traits. So we've got character traits in the last lesson. So you would identify 4 for each character. It shouldn't be that challenging to do. And somehow integrate those 4 into the novel, or into your letter, without saying that I'm blank and I'll come out and saying that. This part is what the most challenging part of this whole assignment, because you're trying to show what the character's personality is like without actually saying it. That's the part that most students do struggle with when it comes to this assignment. Now, you'll be evaluated according to the following criteria: the use of specific textual details in the body of the letter for 10 marks, the use of appropriate voice for 8 marks, use of proper letter format for 5 marks. And we looked at that back in lesson 8. Looked at writing a letter of complaint. You want to do the exact same thing. It's a different type of letter for this one. And then a detail of the plan and how you're going to implement the characterization for 7 marks. So you get 7 marks for the rough work that you do, for the plan, the outline, and 23 marks for what you find produce in your final copy. So this assignment will probably take you a little bit to do. In the past, students have told me that took them about 2 to 2.5 hours to do, if not more. Because trying to incorporate the characterization that occurs in the letter is very challenging. As I said, it's the hardest part of the whole assignment for most students. And so for the plan, it gives you the outline that you have to complete. So what are the 4 character traits that they have, and how are you going to explain or develop those traits in the letter? Remember, there's a big list of character traits. You can find that list on page 6, back in lesson 11. So, and then you'll have the textual details of what's the examples or the specific events you're going to reference that occurred in the novel. What are you going to talk about in your letter? You see there's space for 4 details, so at least 4 examples from the letter, or from the novel in the letter, sorry, as well as 4 character traits. So in the end, this will end up being in the end it will be probably 2/3 to 3/4 of a page, and it will probably take you about 2.5 to 3 hours to do. And so with that's the end of lesson 12. Now, just a quick preview. We get into lesson 13. We look at what's known as figurative language. But we'll look more at that after the break. I don't want to get into that. What we're going to do instead, because still a bit of time left in class, is we are going to start looking at a bit of part 2 of the novel. Just because I don't want to get started with lesson 13 right now, and it'll give you a bit of an insight into the start of the second part of the novel. This is where it gets a lot more busy, a lot more stuff occurs then. And a lot more, and the trial happens, and Scout and Gemma, especially, is going to have to grow up really, really fast. So we're start off here at chapter 12 in part 2, which is, you can find that on page 153. Page 153 of the novel. So, it says Jem was 12. He was difficult to live with, inconsistent, moody. His appetite was appalling. He told me it so many times I had to stop pestering my consultant Agus. Reckon he's got a tapeworm? Agus said no, Jem was growing. I must be patient with him and disturb him as little as possible. This change in Jem had come about in a matter of weeks. Mrs. Dubois was not cold in her grave. Jem had seemed grateful enough for my company when he read to her. Overnight, it seemed, Jem had acquired an alien set of values and trying to impose them on me. Several times he went so far as to tell me what to do. After altercation at Jem Hod, it's time you started being a girl and acting right. I burst into tears and fled to Calpurnia. Don't you fret about Mr. Jim, she began. Mr. Jim? Yeah, he's just about Mr. Jim now. He ain't that old, I said. All he needs is somebody to beat him up, and I ain't big enough. Baby, said Calpurnia. I just can't help it if Master Jim's growing up. He's gonna want to be off on himself doing a lot now, doing whatever boys do. So you're just gonna have to come in the kitchen here when you feel lonesome. We'll find lots of things to do in here. In the beginning of that summer boded well. Jem could do what he pleased. Calpurnia would do it till Dill came. She seemed glad to see me when I appeared in the kitchen. By watching her, I began to think there was some skill involved in being a girl. But summer came, and Dill was not there. I received a letter and a snapshot from him. The letter said he had a new father whose picture was enclosed. He went to stay in Meridian because they're planning on building a fishing boat. His father was a like Atticus, only much younger. Dill's new father had a pleasant face and made me glad Dill had captured him, but I was crushed. Dale concluded by saying he would love me forever, and not to worry, he would come and get me and marry me as soon as he got enough money together, so please write. The fact that I had a permanent fiancée was little compensation for his absence. I never thought about it, but summer was Dale by the fish pool smoking string. Dale's eyes alive with complicated plans to make Boo Radley emerge. Summer was a swiftness which Dale could reach up and kiss me when Jem was not looking. The longest we sometimes felt each other. And with him, life was routine. Without him, life was unbearable. I stayed miserable for 2 days. As if it were not enough, the state legislature was called into emergency session, and Atticus left us for 2 weeks. The governor was eager to scrape a few barnacles off the ship of state. There were sit-down strikes in Birmingham. Bread lines in the cities grew longer. People in the country grew poorer. But these events remote from the world of Jem and me. We were surprised one morning to see a cartoon in the Montgomery Advertiser about the catch of Macomb's Finch. It showed Atticus barefooted and in short pants, chained to a desk. He was diligently writing on a slate which some frivolous-looking girls yelled "Yoo-hoo" at him. That's a compliment, explained Jem. He spends time doing things that wouldn't get done if nobody else did them. Huh? In addition to Jem's newly developed characteristics, he had acquired a maddening air of wisdom. Oh, Scout, it's like you're outside in the tax system of the counties and things. That kind of thing's pretty dry to most men. How do you know? Oh, go on and leave me alone. I'm reading the paper. Jem got his wish. I'd part for the kitchen. While she was shelling peas, Calpurnia suddenly said, "What are we going to do with you all church this Sunday?" "Nothing, I reckon. Atticus left us collection." Calpurnia's eyes narrowed. I could tell she was going through her mind. "Cal," I said, "you know we'll behave. We haven't done anything in church in years." Calpurnia evidently remembered a rainy Sunday when we were both fatherless and teacherless. Left to her own devices, the class tied Eunice Ann Simpson to a chair and placed her in the furnace room. We forgot her, trooped upstairs to church, and were listening quietly to the sermon, when a dreadful banging issued from the radiator pipes, persisting until someone investigated and brought forth Eunice Annie, saying she didn't want to play Saddrich no more. Jem Finch said she wouldn't get burned if she had enough faith, but it was hot down there. Besides, Cal, this isn't the first time Atticus left us, I protested. Yeah, but he's certain your teacher's going to be there. I didn't hear him say it this time. Ricky forgot it. Calpurnia scratched her head. Suddenly, she smiled. How about you and Jem like to come to church with me tomorrow? Really? How about it? Grinned Calpurnia. If Calpurnia ever bathed me roughly before, it was nothing compared to her supervision of that Saturday night's routine. She made me soap all over twice, drew fresh water in the tub for each rinse, stuck my head in the basin and washed with octagon soap and castile. She had trusted Jem for years, but the night she invaded his privacy and provoked an outburst. Can anybody take a bath at this house without the whole family looking? Next morning, she began early to go over our clothes. When Calpurnia stayed overnight, she slept in the folding cot in the kitchen. That morning was covered with her Sunday habiliments. She had put so much starch in my dress that it came up like a tent when I sat down. She made me wear a petticoat and shrouded a pink sash tightly around my waist. She moved to my all-patent leather shoes with a cold biscuit until she saw her face in them. "It's like going to Mardi Gras," said Jem. "What's this all for, Cal?" "I don't want anybody saying I don't look after my children," she muttered. "Mr. Jem, you can't absolutely wear that tie with that suit. It's green." "What's the matter with that?" "Suit's blue. Can't you tell?" Hee, I howled. "Jem's colorblind." His face flushed angrily, but Calpurnia said, No, you all quit that. You're going to go to First Purchase with smiles on your faces." First Purchase, African M.E., or Methodist Episcopalian, was in the quarters outside the southern town limits, across the old sawmill tracks. It was an ancient, paint-peeled frame building, the only church in Macon with a steeple and bell, called First Purchase because it was paid for from the first earnings of the freed slaves. Negroes worshipped on Sundays, and white men gambled in it on weekdays. The churchyard was brick-hard clay, as was a cemetery beside it. If someone died during a dry spell, the The valley was covered in chunks of ice until rain softened the earth. A few graves in the cemetery were marked with crumbling tombstones. Newer ones were outlined with brightly colored glass and broken Coca-Cola bottles. Lightning rods guarded some graves, denoting dead who rested uneasily. Stumps of burned-out candles stood in the heads of infant graves. It was a happy cemetery. The warm, bittersweet smell of clean Negro welcomed us as we entered the churchyard. Hearts of love hairdressing mingled with asafoetida, snuff, Hoyt's cologne, Brown's mule, peppermint, and lilac talcum. When they saw Jim and me with Calpurnia, the men stepped back and took off their hats. The women crossed their arms at their waists, weekday gestures of respectful attention. They parted and made a small pathway to the church door for us. Calpurnia walked between Jem and me, responding to the greetings of her brightly clad neighbors. "What's up with you, Miss Cal?" a voice behind us. Calpurnia's hands went to our shoulders, and we stopped and looked around. Standing in the path behind us was a tall Negro woman. Her weight was on one leg. She rested her left elbow in the curve of her hip, pointing at us with the upturned palm. She was bullet-headed with strange almond-shaped eyes, straight nose, and an Indian bow mouth. She seemed 7 feet high. I felt Calpurnia's hands dig into my shoulder. "What you want, Lula?" she asked, in tones I never heard her use. She spoke quietly, contemptuously. "I want to know why you're bringing white children into an N-word church." "This is my company," said Calpurnia. Again, I thought her voice strange. She was talking like the rest of them. "Again, I reckon it's company to Finch's house during the week." I ran to the crowd. "Don't you fret," Calpurnia whispered to me. The rose in her hat trembled indigently. When Lula came up the path towards us, Calpurnia said, "Stop right there, M-word." Lula stopped, but she said, "You ain't got no business bringing them into this here. They got their church, and we got ours. This is our church, ain't it, Miss Cal?" Calpurnia said, "It's the same God, ain't it?" She said, "Let's go home, Cal. They don't want us here." I agreed. They did not want us there. I sensed, rather than saw, that we were being advanced upon. They seemed to be drawing closer to us, but when I looked up at Calpurnia, there was amusement in her eyes. When I looked down the pathway again, Lula was gone. In her place was a solid mass of colored people. One of them stepped forward from the crowd. It was Zebo, the garbage collector. "Mr. Jim," he said, "we're glad to have you all here. Don't pay no attention to Lula. She's contentious because Reverend Sykes threatened to church her. She's a troublemaker from way back, got fancy and haughty ways. We're mighty glad to have you all." With that, Calpurnia led us to the church door where we were greeted by Reverend Sykes, who led us to the front pew. First purchase was unsealed and unpainted within. Along its walls, unlighted kerosene lamps hung on brass brackets. Pine benches served as pews. Behind the rough oak pulpit, a faded pink silk banner proclaimed God is love, the church's only decoration except for a rogative apparent of Hunt's The Light of the World. There was no sign of piano, organ, hymn books, church programs, the familiar ecclesiastical implementia we saw every Sunday. It was dim inside, with a damp coolness slowly dispelled by the gathering congregation. At each seat was a cheap cardboard fan bearing a garish Garden of Gethsemane, courtesy of Tando's Hardware Co. You name it, we sell it. Calpurnia motioned Jem and me to the end of the row and placed herself between us. She fished in her purse, drew out her handkerchief, and tied the hard wad of change in its corners. "She gave us a dime to me, a dime to Jem. We got ours," he whispered. "You keep it," said Calpurnia. "You're my company." Jem's face showed brief indecision and the ethics of withholding his own dime, but his innate courtesy won, and shifted his dime to his pocket. I did likewise with no qualms. "Cal, don't whisper. Do we have any hymn books?" "We didn't have any," she said. How, shh," she said. Reverend Sykes was standing behind the pulpit, staring the congregation to silence. He was a short, stocky man with a black suit, black tie, white shirt, and gold watch chain that glinted in the light from the frosted windows. He said, "Brethren and sisters, we are particularly glad to have company with us this morning. Mr. and Miss Finch, you all know their father. Before I begin, I would like to read some announcements." Reverend Sykes shoveled some papers, chose and held it at arm's length. The Missionary Society meets the homeless sister Annette Reeves next Tuesday. Bring your sewing. Read for another paper. You all know Brother Tom Robinson's trouble. He's been a faithful member of First Purchase since he was a boy. The collection taken up today, and for the next 3 Sundays will go to Helen, his wife, to about a home. I punched him. That's Tom. Agassi. Shh. I turned the cup around, which hushed for it out my mouth. Subdued, I fixed my attention on Reverend Sykes, who seemed to be waiting for me to settle down. Will the music superintendent lead us in the first hymn? He said. Zebo rose from his pew and walked down the center aisle, stopping in front of us and facing the congregation. He was carrying a battered hymn book. He opened it and said, we'll sing number 273. How are we going to sing if there ain't no hymn books? We're going to sound hush baby shorts. You'll see in a minute. Zebo cleared his throat and read in a voice like the rumble of distant artillery. There is a land beyond the river. We're actually on pitch. 100 voices sang out Zebo's words. The last syllable, held to husky hum, was followed by Zebo saying, that we call a sweet forever. Again, music swelled around us. The last note lingered, and Zebo met it with the next line. We only reached that far shore by faith's decree. The congregation hesitated. Zebo repeated the line and was sung. At the chorus, Zebo closed the book, a signal for the congregation to proceed without his help. At the time of the Jubilee, Zebo said, not far, sweet off forever, beyond the shining river. Line for line. The voices followed in simple harmony until the hymn ended with a melancholy murmur. I looked at Jem, who looked at Zebo in the corner of his eyes. I didn't believe it either, but we both heard it. Reverend Sykes then called the Lord to bless the sick and suffering, which is no different from our church practice, that Reverend Sykes directed the diety's attention to several specific cases. His sermon was forthright denunciation of sin, an austere declaration of the motto on the wall beside him. He warned his flock against the evils of heady brews, gambling, and strange women. Bootleggers caused enough trouble in the quarters, but women were worse. Again, as I often meant about my own church, I concerned with the impurity of woman doctrine that seemed to be practiced by all clergymen. Jim and I had heard the same sermon Sunday after Sunday, with only one exception. Reverend Sykes used his pulpit more freely to express his views on individual lapses from grace. Jim Hardy had been absent from church for 5 Sundays and he wasn't sick. Constance Jackson had better watch her ways. She was in grave danger of quarreling with her neighbors. She argued the only spike fence in the history of the quarters. Reverend Sykes closed his sermon. He stood beside a table in front of the pulpit and questioned the morning offering, proceeding that was strange to Jim and me. One by one, the congregation came forward and dropped nickels and dimes into a black enameled coffee can. Jim and I followed suit and received a soft thank you, as our dimes clinked. To our amazement, Reverend Sykes entered the can at the table and raked the coins in his hand. He straightened up and said, that's not enough. We must have $10. The congregation said, you don't know what it's for. Helen can't leave those children to work while Tom's in jail. If he gives one more dime, we'll have it. Reverend Sykes waved his hand and called someone in the back of the church. Alec, shut the doors. No one leaves until we have $10. Companion scratched her handbag and brought forth a battered leather coin purse. Nah, Cal, Jim Westford. She handed him a shining quarter. We can put ours in. Give me your dime, Scout. The church was becoming stuffy, occurring that Reverend Sykes intended to sweat the congregation out the Mount Dew from his flock. Fans crackled, feet shuffled, tobacco chewers were in agony. Reverend Sykes stared at me saying, Carlo Richardson, haven't seen you up the aisle yet. A thin man in khaki pants came up the aisle and deposited a coin. The congregation murmured approval. Reverend Sykes said, I want all of you to know turn to make a sacrifice and give one more dime apiece. Then we'll have it. Slowly, painfully, $10 was collected. The doors were opened. A gust of warm air revived us. Zebo lined on Jordan's stormy banks, and church was over. I wanted to stay and explore. I could pretty promptly up the aisle ahead of her. The church door. While she paused to speak with Zebo and his family, Jem and I chatted with Reverend Sykes. I was bursting with questions, but decided I would wait and let Calpurnia answer them. We're all especially glad to have you all here, said Reverend Sykes. This church is no better friend than your daddy. Carsey burst. Why are you taking your collection for Tom Robinson's wife? Do you not hear why? asked Reverend Sykes. Helen's got 3 little ones and she can't go to work. What's she taking with her, Reverend? I asked. It was custom for field Negroes with tiny children to deposit them whatever shade there was while her parents worked. Usually the babies would sat in the shade between 2 rows of cotton. Those unable to sit were strapped papoose style to the mothers' backs, residing in extra cotton bags. Reverend Sykes hesitated. To tell you the truth, Miss Jean Louise, Helen's finding it hard to get work these days. When it's picking time, I think Mr. Link Dees will take her. Why not, Reverend? Picard answered, comparing a hand on my shoulder. At pressure, I said, thank you for letting us come. Jim echoed me. We made our way homeward. Cal, I know Tom Robinson's in jail and he's done something awful. Why won't folks hire Helen? I asked. Calpurnia, her navy well-dressed and tub of a hat, walked between Jim and me. It's because of what folks say Tom's done, she said. Folks aren't anxious to have anything to do with any of his family. Just what did he do, Cal? Calpurnia said. Old Mr. Bob Ewell accused him of raping his girl and had him arrested and put in jail. Mr. Ewell? My memory's sure. Doesn't he have anything to do with those Ewells who come the first day of school and then go home? Where Atticus said they're absolute trash. I never heard Atticus talk about folks that way he talked about the Ewells. He said, yeah, those are the ones. Well, if anybody in Macomb knows what kind of folks Ewells are, they glad they're Helen. What's rape, Cal? So you have to ask Mr. Fincher what she said. He can explain it better than I can. You all hungry? The Reverend took a long time unwinding this morning. It's not that you're so tedious. Just like our preacher, said Jem. Why are you all singing the hymns like that way? Linen, she asked? Is that what it is? Yeah, it's called linen. They did it that way as long as I can remember. Do you not get the way she could save money? Jen said, look, they could save the collection money for a year and get some hymn books. Freddie laughed. It wouldn't do any good, she said. They can't read. Can't read, I asked? All those folks? That's right. Can't but 4 folks in the first purchase read, and I'm one of them. Where'd you go to school, Cal? Asked Jem. Nowhere. Let's see now. Who taught me my letters? It was Miss Maudie Atkinson's aunt, old Miss Buford. Are you that old? More than Mr. Finch even, compared again. Not sure how much older, though. We started remembering one time, trying to figure out how old I was. Remember back just a few years before you can. But just not much older when you take out the fact that men can't remember as well as women. What's your birthday, Cal? I just have it on Christmas. It's easy to remember that way. I wouldn't have a real birthday, but Cal. You don't look as old as Atticus. Colored folks don't show their age so fast, she said. Maybe because they can't read. Cal, did you teach Zebo? Yes, Mr. Jim. Wasn't in school even when he was a boy. I made him learn, though. Zebo was Calpurnia's eldest son. I never thought of it. I would have known that Calpurnia was a mature year. Zebo had half-grown children. But I never thought of it about it. You teach him a primer like us? I asked. No, I made him get a page of the Bible every day. And there was a book Miss Buford taught me out of. Bet you don't. No, I don't know where I got it, she said. We didn't know. Said, your granddaddy Finch gave it to me. Were you from Landing? Asked Jem. You never told us that. Stay on, Mr. Jem. I grew up down there between Buford Place and the Landon. Spent all my days working with the Finches or Bufords, and I moved to Macomb when your daddy and mama married. What's the book, Cal asked. Blackstone's Commentaries. Jem was thunderstruck. You mean you got Zeba out of that? Why, yes, Mr. Jem. Compare a finger to your mouth. They were only books I had. Your granddaddy and Mr. Blackstone wrote fine English. That's why you don't talk to the rest of them, Jim. The rest of the colored folks. Look how you talk like they did in church. And that's where we'll end for now. Hope everyone has a good March break. We will be back on Monday, March 23rd. Any questions? You can email to me or Facebook. Everyone.